seeing okay, so do you have it open so you can see if this is
Yeah, I'm gonna have it open on my other monitor.
I'm gonna feel slow. Hang on, I'm just gonna check this all out.
Actually, that doesn't really do anything.
Oh, here it is. Oh, it's on. Okay. That's 8 people. Perfect. Okay. The whole beginning of this is just a mess. Okay, so where'd Jade go?
I'm here.
Okay. Okay. Hi, everyone. So we have, how many of us here? 8 at the moment. Oh, 11. I'm Madison from Sisters of Paperback, and me and my lovely co-host Katie from Katie's Book Nook are hosting the ACOTARALONG. This is our first live show for it. We are here with Jade from the Jaded Reader and Sarah from Novel Serendipity. Jade thankfully stepped in for Noria. Noria from Noria Reads had to cancel for this month because of everything that is going on in Nigeria. If you guys are not aware of the whole hashtag #EndSARS that is currently going on, we will be leaving a link in the description box after this so you guys can educate yourselves on what is happening. So, this live show is for ACOTAR, and we are going to be talking about spoilers with this. So if you have not read the book, just a little thing, but we will not be spoiling the books that, like the other books in the series. So we're going to be talking about things that haven't happened yet for people who it's their first time reading it. What is lovely is that it was Jade and series. So we're going to be talking about things that haven't happened yet for people who it's their first time reading it. What is lovely is who had me?
I did. I opened up the other one so I could see the chat.
I'm like, why can't I hear myself?
I was so because I had it on mute and it still was going. Like, what is happening?
Wonderful. Okay. Hi to everyone as well. Oh, hi from Canada. That's cool. So Jade and Sarah, this is their first time reading the series, first time reading the book. They actually buddy read it together.
Yeah.
It was interesting. Here we are.
I can't with you guys. So do you want to quickly just go through all of our star ratings for the series for the book? So I give it 4 stars.
I also gave it 4 stars.
I also gave it 4 stars.
I gave it 5 stars because, like, does anyone expect anything differently from me?
Yeah, I think it's funny. I think my 4-star comes from 2 parts because I think that the end half is 5 stars, but I also think that in comparison to the other books in the series, it's not as much of my love. So I think that's kind of where the 4-star comes from. So, as your first experience with the book, Jade and Sarah, do you want to give us a little bit of your thoughts about how you feel like it went?
Yeah, we can start off with a spoiler-free section. So, like, in this part, we won't go too in-depth or anything like that, in case anyone's here that hasn't read the book. And then once we get more into the nitty-gritty, we will say when we're going to start saying spoilers about the first book. And then you can leave if you haven't read it yet.
Okay, so spoiler-free thoughts? Okay. I'll go ahead and give my first presumptions about the book. I think we're pretty far off from how the book started. I was expecting it to be pretty much right away, like Fae palace royalty and a lot of like court politics and stuff like that because of the random things I'd heard. But it didn't start out like that, and I thought that like how it started was actually really intriguing, and yeah, I found it interesting and entertaining, and it was especially fun to buddy read because there were so many different reactions that like I needed to share immediately. Or moments where either I thought it was absurd or I thought it was interesting, and I just like it was fun to read, and I wasn't expecting it to be fun. I'm sorry.
You didn't like the Throne of Glass series. You tried to read it twice and it just swamped.
Yes, I got through the first
Really?
Throne of Glass series, and no, I hated the Throne. I'm sorry.
Oh, I didn't know this about you.
Oh yeah. So everyone told me to read Throne of Glass, and then Madison pressured me to read Throne of Glass, and then I read it, and I was like, I hate that. That was not very much fun for me.
It's so interesting, like why you would
Yeah.
hate it, because I feel like you like typical fantasy. So
I don't like typical fantasy.
You don't.
They don't have like something interesting. The character is really important to me, and I hated that character. Wrong book. Point being, I went in with low expectations.
I love that.
And was pleasantly surprised. I thought it like not just surpassed the expectations, but made me realize that maybe I just don't like Throne of Glass series, and maybe I'm not a non-Sarah J. Maas fan, which is nice because I wasn't sure if it was her writing or that book, and now I think I've narrowed it down to just that book.
Yeah, I mean, she also started writing Throne of Glass when she was 16, so I think her newer book series have definitely matured, and even from the beginning of Throne of Glass to the end, I feel like her writing style changed a lot. Oh, I'm getting a call. Sorry. So I think it's like, yeah, like you don't necessarily have to like Throne of Glass to like ACOTAR because it's a slightly different genre. It's more, I would consider this like a fantasy romance instead of like a straight up fantasy, whereas Throne of Glass is like a fantasy with romance. So I think your thoughts make sense.
Yeah.
And what about you, Sarah?
I had zero expectations going into this book. I've been on BookTube for 2.5 years, and I still had no idea what it was about. I've done really good at like having my blinders on as I go through BookTube. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I recognized the name, like the name Farah, and like some of the other characters. Like I've seen the names around, but like had no idea what this book was about at all. So I just started reading. Like I just opened the book and started reading, and I had zero expectations. All I knew was that I went in thinking maybe it was overhyped, which I ended up really liking the book. But because when books are overhyped in the community, I have a really hard time even picking up the book.
Yeah.
Because I'm usually let down because when it's overhyped, my expectations are like really high. And then usually I'm disappointed, but it didn't really happen this time. Like it wasn't a 5-star for me, but it was definitely really enjoyable. It was a really easy read. Like we just flew through it. We were like, let's read 2 chapters a day. And then we were like, actually, let's read more.
The short chapters. She has really short chapters in this one, which I'd forgotten about before going into it again. I was like, oh, damn.
Yeah, and the writing's just really simple, and it's just entertaining. Like it's not complicated. It's just entertaining, like an easy, entertaining read, and that's what I really enjoyed about it.
Awesome. Oh, I'm so happy. So we're still on spoiler free. So I'm trying to think. Did you?
Wait.
Saying hi.
I didn't get to give my thoughts yet.
I love this co-host dynamic. I'm looking forward to
it.
You're just like, no, we're gonna skip. Okay, so my thoughts, since I'm the only one here that gave it 5 stars, I can see objectively why it would be 4 stars, but I'm me and I love it, so I give it 5 stars. The first time I read this book, I remember picking it up and hearing about the series. I had always heard about Farah, and I heard about this other character. Well, I guess you would know his name because he's like in this book. Rysand. That's like all I heard about with this book. So then I started reading this and I'm like, who the hell is Tamlin? And then I was just like, what is going on? So like when I first picked this up, I think I first read it maybe 2 years ago, like right before I started my BookTube actually. I was just like, what is going on? This is not what I expected from like fan art I had seen or anything like that. And I was pleasantly surprised. I think this time around, like the first time around, I kept reading because I was just so intrigued with what's going on. The chapters are short. The first time I read it, I just was really interested in like the romance. And then when we got to Under the Mountain, it was very just good. Maddie, I can't hear you.
Oh, I didn't say anything. I just.
Oh, okay. You were
So
like, was there sound coming out? Anyways, so when we got to Under the Mountain, I was like, wow, this is so good. I'm going to keep reading. This time I felt like what stood out to me more was Feyre's character development. Because I know how the series goes, I think I was able to really catch subtle things that Sarah J. Maas did with her character, and I think her character is the thing that kept me the most intrigued in this book, whereas the first time I read it, it was just more so like, oh, this is like so entertaining and I just want to know what's happening, so I'm going to keep reading. And this time I felt like I was able to appreciate it more for how Sarah J. Maas like lays the path for the future books in the series. I think it's just a very like, it almost feels like a prequel book because of there's a big tone shift later in the series. So I felt like I was kind of, the first time you don't catch those things, and the second time I was able to see like what she had done to make it, the tone shift make sense when it happens. If you don't know what I'm referring to, like just, you know, exciting things are going to happen in the future.
No, I totally agree with you on that, because when you do a reread of this book, you are able to, and I think it's the same thing with a lot of her book series, is you are able to see what she has planned from the beginning and kind of seeds that she begins to plant, so that you can kind of understand and get inklings to how things are going to go. And also just how the development of all the characters that you do get introduced to, even if you think that they're not gonna have anything, you actually end up learning a lot more about them. Like I realized a lot more about her family rereading this book.
Yeah, and Lucian a lot too. Like there's just so much that I picked up on now that I know the plot of the story, and I think that's a sign of a good book, that you can reread it without being bored, because there's definitely been books that I've tried to reread and I'm just like, there's nothing keeping me here because I already know the plot. So like I feel like just purely plot driven books are very hard to reread if you're just like, so what, you know.
Okay, what else is non-spoilery that we can talk about? Oh, did you guys like the romance?
You know, I have to say, I'll go. I was expecting, okay. Sorry, categorizing my thoughts there. Okay, so as far as the romance between Feyre and Tamlin went, I didn't really believe it. I didn't feel a strong connection between the two of them, and I had this underlying thing the entire time. I'm like, this isn't real. This has like, this has ulterior motives behind it. I never trusted it. Like the entire time I kept on being like, nah, something's up. And then when he says he loves her, I'm like, what? Are you sure? Like I was completely like, this is bull. I'm not buying it at all. And so it was like weird for me because I'm like, this is such a romance book. Everyone talks about this freaking steamy book. And I'm over here like, I don't know. I'm not. And then
should we turn off the spoiler-free banner?
I
won't say. I mean, spoiler-wise, okay, yeah, I guess same.
Yeah, you just go for it. We're gonna spoil things now. As
it being a love story, I wasn't buying the love portion at all, and I was really interested in the fact that she had such a connection with sorry, my cat is going to continue to scream. With Sand, because I was like, okay, he seems like he's an asshole, but I'm feeling more of a chemistry connection between the two of them. So I was very confused. And then the sex scene got real painful sounding. I'll let Sarah talk for that one because she had great commentary.
Oh my God.
Is that her passing the baton? Oh, am I starting off with the sex scene?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so we read the sex scene around the same time, and we send audio messages to each other because we both have iPhones. And I think I read it first.
Yeah.
And I just said, that sex scene sounded painful, like really painful. Like, she was saying, I'm splintered and fractured. And I'm like, I don't think she's enjoying herself. Like, that sounds horrible. Like,
that also is kind of Sarah J. Maas's
like
style. She's very descriptive in that way.
But like, I've never heard anyone. Well, I've never read any author describe enjoyable sex scene so painfully. I'm just like, she can't be enjoying herself. Like, it sounds like her bones are being broken at this point. Like, is she okay?
Of the Calamai scene, like when she goes out to get the midnight snack.
Oh, I did like that scene. I thought it was out of nowhere, but I liked it.
Yeah, I like that one too. It was kind of just thrown in there though.
Yeah, I actually had problems with how, if you want to segue into that, I really liked the incorporation of actually the fire festival thing. It has a lot of like pagan references as far as like the Great Hunt. In fact, it was pretty much the Great Hunt, which I thought was really interesting and cool. And I was like, oh, okay. And it was, I mean, pretty legit. The only thing was there was like non-consensual undertones, not for the people that were there, but she couldn't attend because he would not be able to control himself. And like, there was like an alpha thing as far as like him being the only one to have someone, and that's not a Great Hunt, right? Reference.
I definitely got an audio message from Jade saying he better freaking stop.
Like, oh yeah, he was like, yeah,
he said stop.
Like, and I was like, yes, you will. So there was some weird stuff there where it was kind of just understood between Lucien and Tamlin that Tamlin didn't necessarily have to stop, and it was up to Feyre to stay out of the way, and that irked me. So I guess, I'm not sure if I liked Tamlin and Feyre's romance. There's the epiphany moment.
I think on my reread, the first time I read this was probably one of the first books I read with like smut in it. So I was reading this and like, oh my God, she's just
blushing. And they're like, oh my God,
this is spicy.
Everyone remembers their first smut. Mine was an accidental smut. So
like, I
had no idea.
You would go into it and not realize like the smut content of this book. I mean, she wanted it to be adult, new adult, and at the time, the publishers just said no. She was like, well, fine.
But I definitely picked up on my second reread around, like, there were times that I like was like, okay, like this romance is like kind of weird, kind of rushed. But I was like so just like into reading the story, I didn't think about it too much, and then it made sense later down the line. But this time I picked up on a lot of subtle things that I didn't like about the romance, and that I felt like it was more of like I don't want to say like Stockholm syndrome on Feyre's part, but because I don't think it was that like that she was captive and that like she like was coming to like, you know, like Stockholm syndrome. I think it was more so the romance happened because Feyre always had to survive for herself. She could never literally think past like the basic needs part of the whatever survival triangle thing. And then she finally like has a home where she's comfortable and cared for, so she's like gets attached to the first person that shows her that kind of like care and love, because her family like basically depended on her to be the person that took care of them, even though she was the youngest. So like when someone shows her that kind of care and affection, she just gets like very attached to them. And so like I don't necessarily think the romance was built out of a genuine connection between the two of them, but more so out of the circumstantial things that happened.
I think also with that is the fact, like when I was doing this reread, a big thing that I realized was she would always refer to him like as her savior and like someone who, and I was like,
well, he kept reminding her of it too. Like, remember how your family treated you? Remember how you were living? And it's just like, dude, you kidnapped her. Like,
they were like not on footing, I don't think at all.
And also, there is literally a part where he's all like, if I could, I just want to like keep you protected in the house, like as much as I can.
I underlined that, and I wrote a note.
I don't have to do anything. like raise a finger, like just stay and be like he wanted to bubble her as kind of, and especially with him sending her away at the end too, is the same idea of him like
not trusting her to take care of herself, even though
I'm just having this epiphany right now. It's coming to me as I'm speaking. As when he sends her away, it's almost like he doesn't, like he says, "Oh, I love you too much to keep you here in danger." But it's like, if you love her enough, if you love each other, you would keep her there and fight for her. But why you sent her away instead? And I get that.
Hamlin's recurring issue too is that he doesn't fight for what he wants. Like how he kind of like with the curse, like he didn't try to find any other way around it, even if he couldn't like fall in love with a human woman. Like for 49 years, he just sat around in his mansion instead of like doing something actively to like fight Amarantha.
Did you guys oh my god, I just totally blanked on what I was gonna say. No, it's gone. It's gone.
I have some following thoughts again with like the since we're
Beast reference. Keep going.
No, do you want to do your thought? I was just gonna stall.
Oh no,
my thing gonna stall.
Guys, could you guys tell, well, especially Sarah, because you went into this completely not aware of what was going on. Did you catch on to the Beauty and the Beast kind of feeling from it?
We were what, 40% through ish, and I messaged Jade. Like I said, I had no idea what was going on. I said, "This kind of seems like a Beauty and the Beast you're telling," and Jade was like, "That's because it is." I'm like, she's like taken away, and there's this guy, and he's supposed to be scary, and like he has a tower, sort of, and she's basically told she can't leave the premise, and like he belongs to her now, a life for a life, and I'm just like, this story seems really familiar. And Jade was like, "Yeah, Sarah, it's marketed as that." I'm like, "Oh, cool." So I'm not being like super smart and like catching on undertones. It's just like smack dab in my face. Cool.
I want to bring up some of the comments that people are saying because I think they're very good comments here. So I'm going to read this one from Sarah Teeter. Having dated controlling men who think they're justified, Moss writes the story well enough that I gave it 5 stars, and I agree with the tone shift being well written. I prefer the later books, but this is always worth the reread. And then they also said later, I feel like if you've never been in a relationship like this, sometimes Moss feels redundant, especially in the next books in terms of things, making sure things aren't controlling. But if you're dealt with that kind of thing, it's well written. I definitely want to point that out, that there's definitely some like controlling undertones in the romance, and like I do think that that's something that Sarah J. Maas tries. One of the things I really like about her books is in the romances, they're not just straight up always about like how much they love each other. I think it kind of goes into more of like the psychology of relationships and like the dynamic between two people, and the dynamic between Feyre and Tamlin was definitely written well to be off balance, and it's purposely meant to be that way. And I think the way that she writes it is good in the fact that it's very subtle enough that the reader themselves may not even notice it the first time around, because the first time around I like felt like something was a little off, but rereading this again I was like, this is not like a good example of a good romance, like of a healthy relationship.
Well, kind of going off that, Jade and I talked about how the entire relationship is built off of lies, and how still Feyre is told how stupid she is, and how like these people are all lying to you, and like you know that, but how dare you? And it's just like, I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, it was like she got blamed by, I think Alice was the character's name, but she's blamed by Alice in that scene where she comes back and everyone's gone. She's like, "You idiot, like we couldn't tell you, so we were like constructing this lie for you and you didn't fall for it." And Feyre's like, "No, I did fall." And she's like, it's like, "Oh, well, you're all the stupider." I'm like, this is like gaslighting weird behavior, because I'm like, I don't agree with this at all. Everyone needs to be apologizing here. Also, that means that the sex that she consensually had was under false circumstances, which makes you question whether it's even okay or not. I don't think that they needed to have sex for her to love. And it was kind of like a Hail Mary sex because it was the last night. So I'm like, Hail Mary sex where you with under false pretenses? Like, no.
Right, like they were just having sex and then she was gonna like peace out and go home, and he was sending her away.
Yeah.
So
they didn't have sex if that was the actual context. Which
because Lucian kind of did the same thing. Like, we all lied to you and you fell for it, but we didn't want you to fall for it, and now you feel and are doing these things. But like, how dare you? Even when we lied to you, like,
yeah, Lucian is definitely one of the more interesting characters because I think he's very complex. I don't think he has a lot of layers to him, and the layers add on as the series goes on. But even in this book, like at first he's like, let's just kill her. So you can tell he doesn't have like a lot of moral qualms with that kind of stuff. But then, you know, as the series goes on and you get to like see their friendship and their bantering, like you grow to love Lucian, but there's always like, I feel like in this series, you always just kind of know that he's not 100% like good or bad. And I think that's something that's common throughout a lot of her characters. Another character that I want to talk about is Nesta. The sister and the sisters in general, basically. Like Nesta is obviously like a bitch. And then Elaine is just kind of like portrayed as very ignorant, almost like very like ditzy almost. And then the father just like, I don't know what he's doing. He's just like off on his own, whatever. So, and you know, Feyre is kind of forced to take care of them. And I just think Nesta is such an interesting character, and that's why I'm really excited for her book later on. That they're like in the spinoff. I guess it's probably not a spoiler, but like the newer books that are coming out are focusing on other characters. So in this book, it's really interesting because like Nesta and Feyre do not have a good relationship in the beginning, and then when she goes home, you almost see them like kind of mend that relationship a little bit because Nesta did go after Feyre. And I also thought it was very interesting that the glamour didn't work on Nesta at all.
It's
like you're more forgiving than Jade and I were with Nesta when she went home. We were like, no. We
were not impressed with Nesta. Even after she went to go look for Feyre, because it was like, so you know there's a magical wall. Okay. We all know there's a magical wall. It's like part of the world building. You know that that's what keeps fairies and yourselves in and out. So you went to the magical wall, found there was a magical wall, and were like, I had to go back. And then you went back home. And I'm like, okay, that's not trying, especially since like you already knew there was going.
And that's the thing with her character is it's never like she's a very, very frustrating character, but I think it's going to make her book, and like I'm excited for you guys to see her journey through the books because she's a very, very frustrating character, but it's so interesting to read about a female character that is so frustrating and so like just cold and bitter. Like we don't get that like the no like emotions, like closed off, completely Ice Queen basically characters I don't see a lot in YA. So I'm like I like her as like I like reading about her. I don't necessarily think I would like her as a person, but I like reading about her, and I'm interested to see where her story goes. But just as far as like noticing in this book that I think that she is very, I think it's pointed out in this book that she's very the way that she is because she's like hiding a lot of emotional pain.
Yeah. I noticed that a lot in this reread. Like, 'cause I know the first time I read it, I was like, she sucks. And then Elaine was like very naive and very simple. And I think that in this reread, I was able to really see a lot of the hidden development that Mars put in for her and a lot of the hidden explanations into Nesta's character and the comparisons between Feyre and Nesta. And one thing that really stood out to me in this reread especially was all the references to their mother and their mother passing away. And you know, Nesta is the eldest. And so knowing that, you know, she was the one who remembers them having all this money. She remembers them having their downfall. She remembers their mum dying. She remembers their dad, you know, just completely shutting everyone out and kind of the way that she's dealt with that. And, you know, I think that there is a part of her, like she even mentions, like, I was resentful of you because you who could provide for us. And I mean, like, it's the idea of, well, why didn't you try? But at the same time, it's interesting, and I'm excited to see her point of view, because it would just be interesting to see what she thought about all, like, her childhood and growing up. Something that I feel like we really need from her, and so I hope that we get that. But who really knows?
Yeah, because like
February.
right, like the two things that like stood out with me, especially after Feyre returned with like Nesta, is you saw a little bit of Feyre being able to, like, she came back and I think she was more willing to speak her thoughts, where before she would just like leave and go hunt or something, because Nesta at some point was like, oh, well, Dad did this and Dad didn't do this and Dad didn't do this, and Feyre was like, you spent the money too, like you were just as bad as him. Where I feel like before Feyre was taken, she never would have said that to Nesta. Like, she would have just kept her mouth shut.
Right. There's good and bad in like what happened to her.
And I was like, oh, like that's a really interesting like character development, like change of like dynamics a little bit. And then the other thing that like stood out with me with Nesta, she's like, you know, I was jealous and like resentful because you could do all these things that I couldn't do. But then throughout the entire book, like we hear Feyre say like, yeah, like I had to teach myself how to swim. I almost died trying, but I did it. And like, you know, I stalked people in the woods to learn how to hunt. Like, I almost didn't survive a couple times, but like I did it. And like it kind of shows you like how completely different they are. Like, one's just gonna sit back and kind of pout about how she can't do things, and the other one's gonna like go out and nearly kill herself to try to achieve what she needs to for the people she loves. And I think that's like white and black right there. Like, there's no gray. It's just completely different.
There's so much nuance to Sarah J. Maas's characters. It's like, it's crazy to me how she can fit all the nuance in like a little book, because we could talk for hours.
Oh yeah,
definitely.
How everyone is on. I mean, and then Elaine, I feel like you never really. She just seems like such a simple character from the beginning, and she is definitely a more reserved character. And I think it's interesting seeing how each of the three sisters is kind of such a stark contrast to one another, and how they kind of play off one another, and also the way that, you know, when she does return, she finds solace being with Elaine, because Elaine just makes her return so much easier. But that was very interesting. But going off of her returning and going, oh, actually, no, first I want to talk about the cereal. So do you guys remember what the cereal is? Jade, you're looking a little lost.
Is that the ghost that tells things?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I do know what that is.
So, yeah, I was over for a hot second. I was like, she doesn't remember the name.
I did. Yeah, I totally remember that thing now. That's when she first had watery bowels, and I wrote that down. She has watery bowels 3 times. Watery bowels. She gets diarrhea 3 times.
Right at the end, because I read a little bit ahead of Jade. I'm like, she has watery bowels again, and Jade's like, ugh. And then I was like, and again, and Jade's like, why?
Yep. 3 times she says my bowels became watery. I had watery bowels. Yep. Chapter 39, watery bowels is another one. I marked them all.
Thank you.
How did you guys miss it?
Because Sarah J. Maas just has some phrases, and you just go along with it.
Well, I missed the first one, but then after Jade pointed out the first one, I just kept seeing it. I'm just like, I'm uncomfortable with this.
Associated with that feeling of like, you're so scared that you feel like you're gonna poop your pants, like you feel like you're gonna come. That's what I
can honestly say, even if someone else was writing my narrative, I would hide it so well that I would not let anyone announce that I had watery bowels. If someone was telling my third person perspective story, I'd be like, nope, you're not getting to know anything about me and my bowels.
You get diarrhea when you're scared.
Described in the only way, like I even ended up, I'm like, maybe I'm not understanding like human anatomy correctly. So
she Googled it and sent me a screenshot.
Exactly what I thought it was. I was like, I guess I'm not wrong. I just wish I was. And now guess what my Google ads are? Just guess. 3 times.
Why I'm not even surprised. Like, this is like, you pick up on those kind of things. I don't know why, but I just thought of something, but I don't want to mention it because it's a spoiler for the next book. But I'm actually going to mention to you, Katie, later because it just occurred to me and I just remember something. But anyway, regardless of the watery vows, what did you guys think of like all the different creatures that you kind of meet in this book, and including the cereal, and kind of the way that everyone kind of it makes it more fantasy-esque other than it just being fae by having these lesser fae and these other creatures. I feel like it's an interesting development.
I really liked the other creatures and things like that. I also liked the world being split into different seasons and having different creatures live in different habitat seasons, but being able to go between. But it was like, oh, you don't belong here. You're this kind of creature. I liked. It took me a second because some of the other fae or fairies are described as fae or fairies, but they're different than the high fae. So that took me a hot second when someone was blue. I'm like, who else is blue here? Who else did I not know was blue?
No, yeah, I didn't really catch on to that until she could see, when Feyre could see the different like lower fae as what they were.
I think the fact
that's when it like clicked in my brain. I'm like,
and then she was able to like discern them more as well.
I thought that was actually a really smart writing decision. I was like, oh, that's weird that she did that. Like, there's been characters just walking around, but then she even like doubles back and she's like, so people saw me wandering around in the middle of the courtyard. And so that was funny, like played that back. Like she allowed that to be like, yeah, that did happen. But I thought that was really great because you got stages of world building once you felt comfortable with the basic, like the high fae and the basic world building. You were able to expand on it larger, and it wasn't overwhelming. It didn't come off as info dumpy to me.
No, I actually think it helped the read.
Yes.
If anything. Like, I feel like if she wrote it even a little bit differently, it would have felt info dumpy. But the way she wrote it, like, it actually just made things make sense in like a really easy to understand way. Like, she was like, oh, my readers might be confused about this. Let's do this. I'm like, oh, well, that's actually really helpful. I get it now. Like,
I think a part of that
in the comments just said, I need more world building in this book. One of the reasons why I gave it 4 stars. And I will say, the next book, you get a lot of world building. Like I said, that's one of the reasons that this book feels very prequel-like. Like it's just laying the groundwork for the masterpiece that is A Court of Mist and Fury. I mean, if you know me, A Court of Mist and Fury is one of my favorite books of all time. So I'm just gonna say it's a masterpiece. And this book is like nothing. Well, it's good, but it's like not on the level.
Your 5-star read.
Is the 5-star one? A Court of Mist and Fury is like.
Wait, what? Jade?
Is that the next book?
Yeah.
Yes.
Theory?
Yes.
Okay, good. Cool.
It's like just on another level for me, like one of my favorite books of all time. Like if you ask me if this is one of my favorite books of all time, I'd be like, it's a part of one of my favorite series of all time, but like not my favorite book of all time.
And what I also think is interesting is a lot of the issues that people have in the first book, I feel like she remedies with further books. Like you see her grow as a writer and you see how she, like as we keep saying, it feels like a prequel, but you don't realize that when you first read it until you kind of see the series as a whole. You kind of understand what this journey is really about and kind of the depth that she goes into, which I think is very interesting. I do want to circle back to the other creatures that we were talking about before, only because
I have one more comment on what you were saying though about Sarah J. Maas. I think a lot of the times readers are used to, and I think this is more common in adult fantasy, that you don't get everything explained to you right off the bat, and why it's more common for the world to be built like right off the bat, and that's where you get books that feel like very info dumpy. But Sarah J. Maas is very, very good at pacing her world building, and so sometimes you don't get that payoff until later books, and I find that that's true in like most of her series that I've read, that like don't necessarily get that like you kind of almost need to look at her series in like a holistic way, and that's why I think rereading her books is really interesting, because you can get different perspectives because she layers her world building so well and paces it so well that it's not like you're not gonna get everything that you need to know, like to have feelings on this series, the payoff for the series, the way the world building works, the way that all the ground building works, unless you read the whole thing. Anyways, back to what you were saying.
I love that. No, what I was going to have was just background to the scene where you did, because you did mention blue people again, which I know makes you think of Strange Dream, but regardless, the guy that comes in with his wings ripped off, that scene, when I was doing this reread, I feel like no matter how many times I read that scene, it will always have an impact on me. There is something about the way that she writes it that is just so guttural. And it's so sad.
I also think that's when Tamlin starts to like see Feyre in a different light too. Because he's like, why did you do that? Like, why did you do that for this strange creature you claim to hate? It's just like, because it was the right thing to do. And he's just like, what?
I just think, okay, this is just frustrating me now again too, because it's like it's so frustrating once you know about the curse that they're all like mad, like they're pretending to be mad about Andros, but they're actually like not mad at all. Like Andros was like a sacrifice. He let Feyre kill him. And so like,
and then they guilt trip Feyre for the entire book.
The series goes on that like no one like really is mourning Andros. Like it was kind of like that was like their last hope. Like Andros is like an insignificant character in the whole thing. Like so it's frustrating to me that like Feyre comes to feel like genuinely sorry for it, but I don't think like Tamlin or anyone else ever feels like genuinely sorry for the fact that Andros dies, because like the only thing that's mentioned about him when she's there is like, oh yeah, like you killed our friend, obviously we're mad.
No, I completely agree. They sacrificed him and then truly like martyred him only to her. They weren't mourning him. Or if they were mourning him, like if it, it's a sacrifice and they feel sad that it happened, it was definitely undercut by how they chose to blame Feyre when they actually needed her to do it, and the fact that it was set up so he was doing it on purpose. And they even like take on her apology, and like it's never in this book, at least I will say, it's never really that entire thing is not challenged at all. It's just kind of like, yeah,
we needed you to do this, but we're gonna guilt trip you about it.
I think that's part of them building the lie.
Like to her, they're like, you skinned him, like he was a person. Like they like really nail it in where they didn't need to. They could have, especially if they're trying to create like a love connection here. It's like, yeah, I also thought the curse was super specific, like maybe too specific. There was no wiggle room with that curse. Like when they were reading the curse out, I was like, okay.
This only applies to Feyre.
Feyre too? Like it needed to be exactly Feyre. Like
I get that. I do think that sometimes like in this book the curse and like the riddle little gimmicky. But I guess like Amarantha made it like super specific so that it could never be fulfilled, and yet they would still try to fulfill it.
Yeah.
But it wasn't a curse that was broken, but it also like, did it have to be that specific? Probably not.
I like a little bit of wiggle room where like I like when things work out, but there has to be some nuance to it. That was just it was not subtle. It was like the plot of the story is the curse, and then the riddle, I was like, it's love and it's lame. She says in that moment,
riddle could use some work.
I think it's funny because the first time I read it, I was like, I don't know what this answer is.
Me neither.
I read it and I was like, yeah, if I didn't know it was love, I wouldn't have guessed it was love. Like, I'm not good with riddles like that. I would be like,
I would have been sitting there like, oh,
I didn't even listen. Okay, I didn't even listen to the riddle. Like, I heard it in the audiobook and I was like, it's love. Like, it didn't even occur to me that
someone reading it to you.
I was like, this is the sappiest thing that could possibly be. It's love. And then when she's like laying there, I'm like, oh, she has to say love. And I was like, Aquarius, go. I can love.
And again, I think that's one of the areas that like could have used improvement in this book, but I'm still not changing my rating from 5 stars because I love
That's
it.
fine, Katie. We never thought we'd
Yeah.
convert you.
No, there's no stopping me, honestly. But I can, like, that's the thing. I can see the flaws with the book, but I'm still like, well, I love the series, so.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. I feel like it'd be the same.
I think that's how star ratings work. That's why I actually haven't switched away from star ratings, is because I feel like it is incredibly subjective, and that's it. No matter what, a rating is going to be subjective, and you can make it more analytical. Sometimes it's more fun for people, but if they're going to your channel, then they're getting your specific star rating system, your subjective opinion on a book, no matter what. So you should never rate a book something different than what you actually feel that it is. Like, despite its flaws, Katie is in love, and you know what? Like, lame as
I mean, like every book that I read, unless it's like something that I hate, and then I give it like 1 star.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, all of our 5-star books, all of our favorite books have something that isn't, perfect.
Every piece of literature and find a criticism about it. So at the end of the day, just do what you want. Like,
everyone has different viewpoints on anything.
This is a good tangent to go off of because I have many feelings about this subject. But Jade, you are correct.
Thanks, Jade.
That's my short answer. So how about we talk about Under the Mountain and the trials, because I feel like we're heading in that direction, but we haven't gotten to talk about it yet, and like that's obviously the strongest part of the book. So.
I love it's rereading it. I loved it. It is seriously one of my favorite.
Trial number 1. Do we agree that the Midgard worm is the Alaskan bullworm from SpongeBob?
Yes.
Yes.
Because that's the only thing I can think of.
I said that to my dad, and I was like, when you read that, didn't you think of this? And he goes, no. Like,
I'm there.
And I'm sitting there, and he's like, why would you think it looks like the SpongeBob worm? I'm like,
it does.
Wow, let's call out your dad right now.
The Midgard worm is not the Alaskan bullworm.
I could also make it probably an argument for Tremors, but the first thing that came to my mind was definitely the Alaskan bullworm. But Tremors, I feel like there's an argument there.
What's a tremor?
I would never be able to explain Tremors to you, but think the same idea as the Alaskan.
Where's it from?
Oh, the movie Tremors.
Oh, I haven't even heard of it.
Never mind. We'll talk about that later. Anyway.
Things today.
Okay, so I thought the first trial was super badass, where she's like, they're like, oh, you're a huntress, so you're going to hunt. And it definitely shows that Feyre is not stupid. Like, everyone tells her that she's stupid in the beginning. She obviously has had a bad life and is, equipped with her toolbox of skills. She obviously is a very competent hunter, and she's definitely a badass because not only did she outsmarted the worm, she didn't, just fight it and win. Like, she had to be cunning to win the trial. And I just, think it's so badass. She, impaled it. I just think it's awesome. And the way she thought about having to grab bones to get around the corner is about.
Oh yeah, I love that. I just imagined her flying around the corner.
Medieval physics. Yeah. She's smart.
I had totally forgotten in trial 2 that Lucia was threatening to be squished. I completely.
They were both going to be squished. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remembered her, and I remembered her not being able to read. But I did not remember him. So when it mentioned him, I was like, oh.
Do you think that Amarantha made that trial because she had somehow found out that Feyre couldn't read, or because she was taunting her about riddles?
I don't think she knew that she couldn't read.
Yeah.
No, I don't think she knew either. I think that literally was just like a weird trip up thing where she was like, oh man, I can't read. And I was like, oh, same. I'm so sorry. This is probably a really frustrating moment for you. And
then there's just Lucian in the back where he's like, I don't care which one you pick. I know you can't read one. Just do something.
I think that was actually the bigger part of that challenge, was the pressure to save him. And I think that the point of that challenge was also a punishment for the two of them because of their relationship. And I think that Amarantha was just pissed off, and she was like, you know what? I'm going to punish both of you. And I think that was
Now, this, I guess, is kind of a good segue. I mean, we can talk about the third trial in a little bit, but this, I think, is a good segue because Reese helped Feyre with this trial, right? It's like, what did you guys think of him as a character and the role that he played in this book?
The development of him from when you first meet him at Calamai to then.
When I first met him, I thought he was hot because she thought he was hot, and I was like, me too. That's so fun. and then he seemed dangerous, and I was like, oh, he's bad. And then he was
hot
like,
but dangerous.
Yeah, hot and dangerous. I was like, okay, I do like him. And then she was like, no, and he walked away, and I was like, I like him even more now.
And then you messaged me saying, is he good or is he bad? Like, is he a good guy or a bad guy? I was like, I don't know. And then later you're like, oh,
yeah, we're buddy
so great.
He doesn't know anything else that I don't know. And I'm like, is he good? I can't tell.
And I was like, I don't know.
Yeah. So it started out like I really wasn't sure. And then the scene, and Sarah shot back at me, the scene where she is hidden behind Lucian, or like, you know, in the he's like a jerk and there's a severed head involved. Sarah wrote back and she's like, so I guess we know he's bad now. And I was like, I guess I don't know.
That scene. Like, he's awful in that scene. And
he's real bad. He's like reading out her dirty thoughts. And I'm like,
yeah, no,
that's embarrassing.
Sarah and her dirty mind. Like,
yeah,
private.
Yeah. No one needs to know all that.
But then what do you think of the bargain that they struck and how that kind of progressed?
I feel like that goes back to Katie mentioning that this is a total setup for the rest of the series. Because I'm like, he has something that he wants. We just don't know what. And I feel like we won't know for a while. But like he has to want more than just a week, a month with her. Like he definitely wants something else. Like what?
It kind of gave me Hades and Persephone vibes as far as like her going over to his court for like a set like season or whatever like that. I thought that was really interesting. And I was also like, what do you get out of this? Yeah, I thought he was really interesting, and he ended up, I think, being like my favorite. It was Lucian. But Lucian seemed kind of weak towards the end. I mean, you know, he was like tied up and being beat the crap out of him. Like,
his brothers wanted him dead.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that Rhysand ended up being my most interesting. I think the character that like made me want to read the next one immediately. Like I almost started, and then I was like, no, I have an entire TV.
Jade, no, start it.
No, I can't. I literally how
you
long
don't have to listen to your TBR.
I'm going to die. I'm going to die. And the Stormlight Archive series is what's going to kill me. Anyway, it made me want to start the next one because of him. And I thought that was interesting because he doesn't come around really until like the end as a character.
I'm just going to say, like, if you feel like not reading what you're reading and to start A Court of Mist and Fury instead, I would highly recommend this.
Well, I did
just saying.
Ask Jade if we should buddy read the next one, like a couple hours ago. So,
yeah.
And she said yes. So,
yeah, I said yes.
I just want to quickly say, I thought for some reason I knew, Jade, that you were going to say that Lucian was your favorite for a majority of the books. Like, I just knew.
Yeah, Lucian gives me great vibes. Like, I feel like the character gives me vibes.
He's my favorite. Yeah, literally. I think he still was my favorite. I just found Rhysand more interesting by the end, but Lucian I enjoyed the most.
And then what about you, Saz?
I think I really liked Lucian and Tamlin's like banter every once in a while when he's like, just talk to her. Like, and then when sometimes she'd come into the room, he'd like strategically leave. And then like Tamlin would be like, okay, like, come on.
Solid wingman.
Yeah. And I'm just like, okay. And like whenever we get the little snippets of like Feyre like sneaking into the dining room or like passing a doorway and like seeing how Lucien and Tamlin are usually together when Feyre's not around, I really like that. I don't know why, like the bromance of it.
Oh yeah,
I don't know.
they're in a bromance.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting actually when Lucien ends up being like getting whipped or like lashes. He's like, "Oh no, poor Tamlin had to watch," and I was like, "Yeah." Like that is in the circumstance one of two.
Wait, didn't Tamlin have to give the lashes?
Huh?
Didn't Tamlin have to give the lashes himself?
Yeah, Tamlin gave the lashes to Lucien for helping her.
Which is sad, almost as sad as Lucien getting the lashes in the first place.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna say priorities were a little shifty there.
Oh, were you guys surprised to learn that he was part of the Autumn Court, or did you kind of feel like there was something before that was revealed?
I was surprised how I wasn't really surprised that he came from a different court. I guess I was more surprised of like how his family treats him, like how he's part of like royalty, but how like I liked the interaction with Feyre and then his mom. Like I was like, oh, okay, I like that. And then his brothers, I'm like, can someone murder them, please? Like, can they be murdered soon? Like
they were cursed in literally every scene they were in. Like one of the things was when Feyre was like stuck in that outfit being like drug dancing, because that was a whole other moment. Like it's always mentioned that they're like leering, and I'm like, you guys suck. But I was
someone feed him to the worm.
I wasn't surprised that he was part of the Autumn Court because he had red hair. Like,
I mean, you know exactly. Like,
yeah, pretty much.
Tamlin has blonde hair. Lucien has red hair. It all makes sense. Black hair. We got all the different hair colors lined up with the That's
Yeah.
Oh, I like the comment. Where's the Wolf? Who said, "I liked Lucien too, but think he's held back because of Tamlin."
Oh, I agree. I like.
I really
That's true.
I think that's so true.
Yeah.
And I think that becomes more prevalent as we go on. That Tamlin is like kind of controlling of Lucien, and Lucien's like kind of loyal to him because Tamlin like did save him when like, you know, stuff went down with him. But
his family.
But that dynamic is also not entirely even either.
No, I'd say it's another power dynamic, and it's very similar to how Feyre's dynamic was with Tamlin. Yeah.
So we'll circle back to what Jade was just saying about the whole scene with the fairy wine and how she was painted and the gauzy outfits that she would be wearing and those scenes, which definitely the first time you read them seem problematic.
Sure.
Yeah.
So do you guys want to give like your opinions on how that is and kind of?
I definitely, obviously, I mean, she is drugged and she's like, she's touched. I know that it's mentioned like, oh, he only ever touches my waist or like something like that. It's like, yeah, you don't get to touch. Like, there's no special part of your body where it's like, this is completely non-consensual. This is a non-consensual part of your body. Like, it's like, no matter what, it's still a violation of free will, of her personal boundaries, and she doesn't like it. So yeah, as much as I was interested in Rhysand's character, I did not like that at all. And I'm not sure, I can't remember if it was necessary to play into the plot, because I understood that like she needed to be kind of like paraded about. But I also feel like giving her the option of drinking it to not be present for it or something, I don't know. And having her dance, and I didn't like it.
Well, at times he's like, I'm gonna make you drink this wine for your own good. It's like, but is it? like I don't know. Yeah. But I mean, down the road, she's like, I need to be drugged. Like, this is too hard. But like at the beginning,
Yeah. I think that's one of the scenes where, like,
it's explained in book 2, isn't it, Katie? Or am I just imagining that?
I feel like it's never fully justified or like explained fully. That's one of the things about this book that I never feel like is fully addressed. Like, it kind of is, but I don't think it's fully addressed. And I will say it's probably one of the things that I have like the most problems with in the series. But it's like, I think that in order for me to like be like more like have more of like a feeling of understanding of why it happened, and it didn't necessarily have to happen in this book, but I think that there needed to be more of a motivation for why those things needed to happen to Feyre, and especially on such like a continuous basis as they were. Because like I get why Reese is doing it, but like it just doesn't seem like strong enough motivations for the lengths that were taken, kind of. Even knowing what I know, I think if I was the author, like if I was Sarah J. Maas, I would potentially, like, this could potentially just be like a flaw of like maybe she just wasn't like fully matured as like a writer in that time point. Like, it is an older book of hers. I think I would have made the choice for like if those things were going to happen, that there had to be more of a stronger reason of why they were happening, like what had forced the hand, and like I don't know. That's just my personal opinion. But like, still gave 5 stars, so it's fine.
No, I definitely agree with you on that. Like, it is vaguely, like, it's explained on a very surface level, and I do think that the extent that everything happens, it definitely needed a deeper reason.
And I think that's one of the things that kind of got.
So that is the thing.
Yeah,
Is that Gavin who made the squeaking noise?
Oh, you can hear that?
Oh, yeah.
My dog is like loudly?
No, it's fine.
Just a couple times.
Play it back later.
Okay, yeah. If you hear one squeaky noise, that's my dog in the other room with the squeaky toy, but he's a puppy, so it's either that or furniture.
Yeah, he hasn't learned how to train her Gavin.
I haven't touched my Gavin. That's his toy. He's allowed to chew that.
Funny because Gavin and how to train your Gavin is a thing.
I know. I know how to train my Gavin. Kind of.
A little bit.
A little bit.
So, oh no, that's not. Never mind. Take it back. What I was going to say, I'll take it back. Oh, okay. At the very end, let's talk about the final trial. That's what we're up to. What are your takes on how that went? Just the final. We'll go into the after effects of the trial, but the trial itself, how she laid it out with Three Fae, the choices, and how it all went.
Okay, so when all 3 of the like sacked heads were brought forward, like they still were attached to their bodies, the people with sacks on their heads came forward. I was afraid one of them was Lucian because I cared about Lucian. My only note was, if one of these is Lucian, I'm going to not read this. And then it like took off the first bag, and it was just like some rando, and I was like, oh, cool.
That's fine.
Like the eyes, and I was like, oh, this is sad. And then she like does it, and I was like, oh. I was honestly surprised because so many authors like want their main characters to be, I don't know, pure in that way. Yeah, exactly. It's a purity thing. It's like, oh, they would never kill though. And it's like when it came down to it, they couldn't do it. And I was like, oh, no, she did it.
Feyre can do it.
Feyre did it. Yeah, for what needed to be done. And then when it got to the third one, I was honestly confused. When he was in there, Tamlin. When Tamlin was there and then they switched, I was like, oh, that made the foreshadowing of him acting weird make sense. But I did not get the Stoneheart reference. Like, I don't know why I got the riddle, but not the fact that his... I was like, apparently that wasn't hammered in enough for me because, like, they did some foreshadowing.
It seemed really random, to be honest, to me too. I was like, where does this fit into anything? Like, why is
She was like,
his
oh, he's got a stone
organ
heart.
different?
Yeah, he's got a stone heart, and I'm like, okay, so I mean, there might be something to the fact that he has a stone heart, but if there's not enough lead up for me to figure it out I like to feel smart, okay? Like, I needed to be able to be like, no, because his heart is made of stone, but it was too subtle for me.
Jade's like,
Yeah, so
if you make me feel stupid, there's something wrong with your writing.
even in the comments, so someone said when I reread ACOTAR, I saw it mentioned 2 or 3 times about his stone heart, and it blew my mind. I honestly forgot about that part before I went into this reread, so I didn't pick up on it. But maybe if I had remembered, I would have
Well, that makes me feel better about not picking it up.
I didn't pick
I would have never picked it up on my first read ever. Because the stone heart of stone is such like a common turn of phrase.
Yeah, and he is really stoic too. He's like not a super passionate guy. So like it made sense to me, and I don't know if that's like because his heart is made of stone or not. I don't know him well enough, despite him being like the main love interest for an entire book. Especially finding out that so much of it was a lie. I'm like, I don't know you, Tamlin.
And neither does Feyre.
Right, and neither does Feyre. But yeah, so I was thrown off by the Stoneheart thing, but by that point the plot had been really moving, and so I was like, all right, whatever, cool. Stoneheart, oh, he survived. What's happening now? So yeah, I don't think that moment was impactful for me as it could have been, because I got distracted by the Stoneheart thing. But apart from that,
because she picked it up, she's like, oh, I can stab him because he'll be fine.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be hilarious if she was wrong?
Like, oops.
I
he also made a face like, oh, she gets it. And I'm just like, gets what?
Like, yeah, I was like, I don't get it.
like you two have something going on. Like you guys never had this conversation. If you've never had this conversation, I was never, let into this secret, and thus this whole scene makes no sense.
Yeah, I did like the fact that she did stab him though, because I thought that was good character development for her. That I mean, I would have liked less like consensual eyes between him and her. Like, yeah,
not bloody enough.
I would have liked a little bit more of him, maybe even him being surprised that she stabbed him, because she does stab him, and like there, even if it was a really good guess, shut up, even if it was a really good guess, like it still was a risk, and she took it. So I liked that part.
Her other choice was the entire time she was down there, she was like, I have to save these people. Like, I did not come down here to fail. Like, I'm going to save them no matter what. And I think I like how you pointed out, that Sarah J. Maas let her, kill them, and kind of the way that it was written and how it affected her as she was killing these Fae, and the way that she was responding to them. And I just think
Feyre takes on a lot of responsibility for things that, like, I think that's part of her character is that she's like very, very caring in that way, that she feels responsibility for a lot of things. Like, I'm sure her mother on her deathbed was like, oh yeah, like just take care of the family. And Feyre literally took that as like her life's mission. And like, even when she was at the manor, she's like, no, like I made a promise to my mother on her deathbed that like I had to take care of them and blah, 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 blah. And I just think that's part of her character, to like take on this responsibility for others that other people wouldn't necessarily do.
I did think, this is a little off topic, but I did think it was strange from the beginning. It's like we knew starting off the book that she was a painter, but all the painting references were kind of a bit much throughout this book. I do think that was one thing that stood out to me. I don't know why that came into my brain, but it just did at that moment.
I liked it because I took that as like a tool of Feyre's character development. The fact that like she like was always shutting down the thoughts of painting, like she'd start to think about them, and then she I can't think about that. And then as she actually like had a chance to like kind of connect with her personality beyond hunting, like I think the painting was like a vehicle to show her character development and her becoming more like comfortable and like a functioning human being beyond finding the next meal.
Becoming an individual for herself instead of other people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's a really big thing for Feyre throughout the series too, when it comes to her own like self autonomy.
Yeah, no, I liked the painting part. I actually got, is her other sister's name Elaine? Is that made up in my head? Okay, cool. When her sister is like, oh, I miss our little cottage. And Feyre's like, why? And she's like, I don't know. It's always been home. I was like, you know what, though? Guess who made it home? Guess who painted a whole bunch of little leaves and vines everywhere? Like, I really liked that about Feyre is that she still did painting. It was just like to her best ability while still trying to make it about other people. And I liked that she then, once she realized she had no one to take care of, she was painting for herself.
We talked a lot about Nesta, and Jade really doesn't like Elaine either.
No, I don't like either.
She has a lot of strong feelings.
I have a high standard for like blood doesn't mean a lot to me. So when it comes to family, it's like, what makes you family? Are you rising up to the family like that is necessary? And it's like, no, she has no. No, if you did not meet my family's dynamic standards, you are gone. I wouldn't have come back for you. So
no, I definitely see that. When she painted the, I can never say his name, the ACOTAR. You know the one like the weird bat-looking creature.
She got it right. No, she didn't know what he looked like. I still can't figure that one out. I don't know how she painted him
in her dream.
What?
Because she saw him in her dream.
Oh, she did?
But she didn't realize that's who she saw in the dream and then didn't really understand what she was painting. And then she saw him and she was like, ah!
Oh. I thought she just like had painted what she thought the ACOTAR was after she had seen him. But maybe, because she dreamed about him that night. Okay. This makes sense.
Also, the fan art for it is just still terrifying. Like that creature is like, I would, if I saw him, I could like not be okay.
Surreal, not that cute either, but like surreal.
But I love surreal.
Yes, I have strong feelings about the surreal.
I feel like the fan art, actually, on the topic of fan art, there's some really good fan art out there. Like,
there's so much fan art for it.
Yeah.
This hasn't been licensed. So Sarah J. Maas licensed her Throne of Glass series, so people aren't allowed to sell that anymore, but they're still allowed to sell her like Aqua Thorns and Roses series, so you see a lot more fan art for it because it can be reproduced and things like that.
I didn't know Throne of Glass was licensed, but that makes sense.
Yeah, that's why I can't buy as much stuff as I would.
How long has it been licensed for?
It happened during the time that I've been on BookTube. I know that because at the beginning I bought a couple pieces and then it went kaput. So
okay, I just don't remember hearing about it, but that might have been before I read it.
I have a Charlie Bowater piece before she got the whole license and everything too. Like it's a whole.
But Sarah J. Maas works with Charlie Bowater a lot, so like I would assume Charlie Bowater would still be able to.
I think it's just.
I don't know.
License.
This was my favorite piece of fan art that I saw.
That's why I was laughing when you're like, there's a lot of great fan art out there. And all I can think of is when you sent me that the other day.
Wait, that's what Tamlin and Lucian. Oh my god.
They have their little masks on.
That's beautiful.
I really appreciated it.
I actually ran, because at the beginning of this live show, I'm like, I haven't been spoiled for this in 2.5 years. I went into this book knowing nothing. Since I started this book, I've started seeing things and I'm like, that's definitely a spoiler. And I think I was always seeing these things, but now I know who they are. So like there's a huge spoiler.
I did stop looking at the fan art.
I wasn't even looking for it.
Spoil you. Do not Google it. It will spoil you.
Yeah.
I just saw it on Twitter. Someone's like, look at this fan art. And I'm like, wait a second.
I would like to suggest reading like the character names until you finish the series.
Yeah, I had to fix. So I put once I started the books, I was like, I need to put things on mute, and so I put everything on mute, and I couldn't see you guys anymore because the Twitter Twitter when like the entire thing was just gone. I was like, okay. So I like tried to go through and I'm like super specific things. But yeah, your guys' tweets were coming up and I was like, oh, they don't think I'm sharing anything. So I had to undo it.
Really funny.
So now
the major spoiler I ran into, Jade was like, just tell me what it is. Just like,
oh yeah.
Yeah.
What was it?
I love there's people.
Sarah text me first, and then I'm gonna let you know if you can tell Jade.
Okay, I'll text it to you. You guys can go on.
Okay, so we talked about the trial, the having to stab him. What about? Well, we haven't actually even talked about Amarantha and her as a evil character, and how everything does develop after she does kill that one and like succeeds, and then Amarantha's like, "JK, I still don't care."
Yeah. She wasn't a super impressive villain to me. Like, I mean, I fought better. As far as,
not impressed.
Yeah, as far as reading villains go, I'm like, ow. Yeah. So she didn't stand out to me as a villain. She seemed very stereotypically like evil, and like her backstory was like she had one, but it was the same way that like, well, everyone's got a backstory. It didn't feel very dynamic. I just didn't really care. She was just like the big bad that needed to go.
Not of villains.
No.
My biggest problem with her is her jewelry style, to be completely honest. Like, that's going a little too far. Like,
Sure.
That's not classy. Like,
you don't want an eye on your ring finger. Like, you don't like to walk around and be like, you see all this.
well, like whenever it's like, oh, the eye was looking at me, like the eye turned to look at me. I'm like, can it not? Like, come on.
Yeah.
I thought it was hilarious when she first sees Amarantha. She goes, she wasn't as pretty as I thought she was gonna be. I was like,
Feyre has high standards after being in Fairy, like.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Especially as a human. Like, just imagine what she thinks of you. Like,
yeah. Oh, I did catch. She describes humans when she comes back after like being in a CGI world. Like she comes back and sees actual humans and is like, gross. You guys all suck. She says like she describes them as blood and bone, and I noticed that because that's the human world in the Crescent City thing. She says like, oh, they're of blood and bone, and like they're too much.
Oh,
I'm like,
earth and blood. I highlighted that.
Earth and blood. That's what she says. She says of earth and blood. Yeah. She
My
says
thinking of that is that that's not actually a connection to Crescent City. I think that's just Sarah J. Maas having those types of things like in her brain.
Except for like, okay, so she describes humans specifically. I don't think that the worlds are tied. I think it's just she ended up being inspired and saying that. Like,
yeah. No, I think she pulled from her.
She says humans are of earth and blood, and she was like, they look gross or something like that. And then the human class in Crescent City is the House of Earth and Blood. So whatever.
Oh, okay, yeah. Okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
So I think she was inspired by herself, which I mean.
Yeah, no, I think those things
okay,
in her brain.
Goals.
Like, Earth and Blood, great thing to call humans. Okay.
Yeah.
Imagine how easy your life would be if you were inspired by yourself. Like, imagine how far we could go.
Oh, like, I can't imagine.
like I wonder what that feels like. Like the power Sarah J. Maas has to feel empowered and inspired by herself. Like,
sometimes I riff off of my own jokes, but I'm usually the only one laughing, so I don't think
it's like no one else does it funny, but I think I'm hilarious.
Yeah.
So going back to Amarantha at the end, how Feyre dies. She dies. And they bring her back. What did you guys think about that whole scene? You know, you actually end up seeing it through Rhys's eyes. And
well, she's lucky she saved them, because otherwise they would have let her die.
Yeah.
Like, they're very cutthroat. Like, if she was just dying, even after going through all three, they would have been like, "Oh, poor human." But then when they're like, "Oh, well, she saved us," I'm just like, "Okay."
Yeah, it even takes like the characters that are closest to her to like offer like a sacrificial like drip first for anyone else to step forward. I'm like, you guys have all been like cheering for her. This is like very like you're watching the sport, but you're not, supporting the player type thing.
Well, they had to like give away part of their own power, so I'm sure that they were very hesitant. To give away their little drips of.
It's a drip.
Essence.
Yeah.
I'm like, come on. I get not like just tossing your drips around, but like one drip drop. I don't know.
They're rulers. They're greedy.
Yeah.
Because like I think if anyone has the quote, but like when Rhysand like it's like, "Oh, okay, I guess," like everyone else did. Like the comment he says when he does it, I was just like, like that's kind of weird. Because like I don't know, everything he's done for her up until then, and then his comment when he saves her life, basically, I didn't feel like matched.
So the reason why is because he's talking to Tamlin when he says that. He says to Tamlin, "For what she gave, we bestow what our predecessors granted to few before." And then he says, "This makes us even." So he's saying this makes us even to Tamlin. So that Tamlin's not going to be a dick to him. Because Tamlin hates him at the moment.
And we also know that Tamlin is a little possessive.
Well, if someone was, toting around the person you loved in basically nothing, like I hope my boyfriend would be a little jealous too. Just saying. Like in Tamlin's defense, he's watching some other guy basically tote around his girlfriend practically naked.
Yeah, that could put a little strain on things.
Yeah.
So Rebecca is saying that they feel like it's a cop out that Feyre was turned high fae. Do you guys think that? I mean, I can see why that is thought for sure, but I think, like Katie and I have said, this feels like a prequel, and the whole point of this was maybe just to get her to become high fae, and the whole point of that.
So yes, I did. Oh, sorry. Was someone else talking?
You go first.
All right.
You can go.
Yes, I did.
Look at my manners, everyone.
I did think it was a cop out. But at the same time, I was kind of expecting it because I thought, like I said at the beginning of this live, I went in thinking everyone was high fae and that this was going to be like just some high society, like political intrigue book. So when she wasn't, I actually was like, oh, okay. And I liked her as a human and her like being, like having a stronger dynamic. So I liked her human. So I was like, oh, I didn't really want her to be fae. Like, and I was like, I'm not sure if the word for me would be cop out, but I did think I was like a
little convenient of a solution at the end of the book. I think it could have been drawn out.
I think it could have either been drawn out or led up to more. I didn't know how to make a high fae. I thought that they were born. I did like, unless I missed something at the very beginning, which as a first time reader,
there weren't that many hints dropped about humans becoming.
Okay. That's what I felt. So
I also think that a big part is knowing that there are high fae and then there are high lords. And the high lords are the ones that gave her their power. And I'm so sorry, Jade. So you have the lesser fae down here, and that's like, the very basic fairies. Okay, I hate
Alice.
Go on.
Yeah, Alice is a lesser fae, and I think it's mentioned, they have one kind. She's pretending. I literally can't even. And
oh my God.
They have like a specific power. They can do certain things, but they really don't have much. Then you have the high fae, and they're the ones who they look human, but they just have like the pointy ears. They're very beautiful, and they have certain powers, but they're still not that strong. They're stronger. And then you have the High Lords, and they are the strongest of the strong, and they are the ones who have like immense powers, especially specific to their court. And so, as we said, you know, you have Tamlin, who can shift into a beast. He can shift others into things, and he has control over, like, you know, Spring in general. And how he says, I ended up like people could tell I was becoming stronger, and because I was the strongest, I had like it was my role to become High Lord. He didn't want to become High Lord, High Lord for a different reason. But it's whoever's the most powerful that becomes the High Lord. You know, you have Reese, who even after his powers diminish can still break people's mind, and he can shift in and out of the shadows. And you don't really learn about anyone else's powers, but that's kind of how it works. And so when the High Lords give their power, it's because they are like the tip of the top. Like no one else can really beat them from what they have. I don't know if anyone else stated that.
Yeah.
I hope that was information.
No, that makes sense. I think,
go for it.
I like I said, I think like it for where the series goes, it makes sense. But reading it, I could see how it could feel a little like almost like a letdown. Like it could have just been more of a conflict of them. Like, are they going to give the power or not? Like, what can we do to like get her back to life? Like, it could have been something that could have been extended, but like for me overall, I'm like fine with the choice because it makes sense for where the series goes in the future.
Yeah,
but they didn't discuss it. That's the one thing I realized. They didn't discuss it.
No, that's why it felt like a cop out when I first read it, and why I would say I agree with Rebecca is because like they didn't draw it out. There wasn't anything leading up to it. It was just like this happens, and now you know it can happen. And I'm like, okay, but now it feels convenient when before it would have been like, oh, are they going to do it? These guys have been complete and total jerks. Like they've barely cared, you know? So that's the thing. Okay, so just to be clear, Lesser Fae, not much, kind of lame. High Fae, pointy ears, hotties. Fae Lords, strongest of the strong, immense. Fae Lords can give powers which turn into High Fae, not Fae Lords. Or can High Fae turn into Fae Lords? That's all I need.
The high lords are High Fae, but not all High Fae are High Lords.
Oh, great. This is like the rectangle square thing, isn't it? Okay.
Like, you have the High Fae, and then the people that rule over the High Fae are the High Lords. They're still High Fae, but they're like super powerful, super, you know, powers.
Okay.
High Fae become High Lords.
Can Sarah be a High Lord?
Down the road. Does power work like that?
You guys realized it, like, you know, I can't remember this. Remember the storyline how he has a bunch of brothers and like 2 sisters, but it was whoever's the most powerful that would become the next lord, and that his siblings were so afraid of him having powers that they kind of like effed him around, and like so it's familiarly passed down because your strength is it's passed down generational, so it tends to stay within the same family. Like to have someone randomly be born from like a lesser fae be like super powerful, it just doesn't happen as well. And it's definitely explained more in the next book because you get to learn a lot more about the different courts. But hopefully this helps you, Jade.
Someone asked, are High Lords all male? It's not
High Lord
in this book, but they are all high lords. So yeah, just like
High Lord, and then
they're all guys. I think they're all mentioned in the end of the book. Yeah, right now all of the High Lords are men. So like that's
right now. Good to know.
In the book where she's like, oh, like, is there such thing as a high lady? Like, like before she knew who Amarantha was, she was like, is this like a high lady that like we don't know about? Like, I didn't even know there were such things. And
yeah, like Amarantha is considered the High Queen with the High Lords underneath her.
There's a lot going on. It is definitely more explained in the next book, like how everything.
You'll get to understand the court structures. That's one of the cool things about the next book too, is like you get more of the overall court structures, not just the Spring Court and Under the Mountain.
Very complex. Very complex.
So much going on here.
I think it's funny. So just before this live happened, Jade mentioned to me, she goes, yeah, like at the very end of the book, like, you know, the hot dude. And I was like, Reese.
Literally, anytime he is described as super hot. So like, obviously he's the hot dude.
What else do we have to discuss to do with this?
I think we pretty thoroughly discussed. I will say, I can't say anything about it, but I picked up on a lot of metaphorical foreshadowing just when it came to imagery that was used to describe Feyre. And that's all. Just interesting choices of words that foreshadow things.
Madison obviously didn't pick up on that because she's giving you the face of confusion. She's like, did you know?
I'll explain it to you later, Madison, but
even the eyebrow raise.
But like, to me, I picked up on subtle things, and I'm proud of myself for that, even though I didn't freaking get the whatever, like, Stoneheart thing.
No, I picked up on things too. Like, I use like light purple tabs for like when they mention things that like I knew would come up later on in the series.
Later, yeah. That's my green tab foreshadowing.
Oh, I use green for
I love books that have a lot of aspects that come back later. Like those end up being like my favorite
Sarah
series.
J. Maas books in general because she does that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
A lot.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree.
It's like when it's really, really subtle, but it's still something that you remember. Payoff is so great.
It is. It's like my favorite thing when reading like later books in any series. I'm just like, I remember.
That's what
I remember when they dropped the seed.
Mm-hmm. That's the thing. That's what makes books interesting enough to read, because then you can go back and get it again. Whereas like if you're not getting anything extra out of that reread, like.
I know. Now I'm going through and looking at all my foreshadowing tabs, and I'm like, what did I mark? Like, what did I think of all this stuff? Like,
what did I think? An hour and a half long live show. What did I think of this?
Again, what?
Do I have legitimate thoughts on this book? I don't know.
I think it's funny because also all my pink tabs at the very end with like Under the Mountain and then like Reese, and then like my blue tabs are also at the end. It's kind of funny. I think one of the most pivotal. We love that. Pivotal ones at the very end was when she says, a high lord who loved to fly trapped under the mountain. Like how, like at that very, like in the last two chapters when they're all leaving, she sees Reese for the first time and like he's outside and, what'd you guys think of him having the bat wings?
Oh yeah, he was a bat.
He's a little bat boy.
I kept forgetting. Like even when they were talking about it, I was like, what? And then I was like, oh yeah, you're a bat. Like you got bat wings. I don't actually. That doesn't do it for me.
He also seemed uncomfortable with them. He's like, I don't show these to just anyone. And I was like, is there a story behind that? like, what's going on? Like, are you okay?
Oh God. Stephanie just mentioned, do you like the new covers for the series? Oh, Stephanie.
No.
Sarah bought them.
I did buy them. And I just filmed a video before I came on this live show and I talk about it. I'm like, I don't like them. But every time I look at them, they grow on me a little bit more. Like I'm growing into them. Like I sound like I'm going through puberty. Like
yeah, they remind me into the rye. So the new cover, I don't hate the new cover because I don't have anything better to compare it to. So that's the new one. You know what? I'm just gonna like on my shelves treat it as its separate thing. But I just think that they were trying to redesign it to be more adult and more sophisticated, and there's so many other different directions that they could have gone in, and they went in the worst possible direction.
They almost seem lazy, to be honest. Like the design almost seems
horrible. The text and like it's just bad. And like if you want like a plain like book with like just a title and the simple like it could have just been so much better. But like this is iconic, and I don't think that this is too young adult at all because there are adult books that have similar type covers.
Well,
and I just don't.
7 night covers are a girl on it, and then like the US edition, and then also shoot. The House of Earth and Blood is adult. And that also as a look.
I thought maybe they wanted to change the cover because this is obviously Feyre on the cover and this Feyre on the cover, and the next books in the series don't all focus on Feyre, but I wanted to see like how they would have Nesta on the cover. I thought that they could have done something really cool. Like even in this book, one of the things that's always mentioned is like, eyes. So what if they did like an eye thing at the bottom? That would have been so freaking cool. No.
Oh, yeah, like what they have on the back, make that the front.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
But like with Nesta, like this is iconic. It's iconic, and they ruined the whole face of the series. And you could have made it cool and had a different character on the front and kept like the same similar idea, but like silver flames. Like you could have had silver flames everywhere. You could have had like a face or like something like a cool dress. No.
Speaking of physical books, Madison made me send her a video of me flopping the book around because she wanted to know how floppy it was.
Well, I didn't want to buy it and be like a stiff, like you know how the Raven Boys
bought the paperback so you could add
Raven Boys.
When like the paperbacks of the Raven Boys are awful.
Okay, Scholastic has the worst paperback binding ever.
Yeah,
they're not floppy, Jade.
They're like a frisbee. Like I could just like buy it.
Because I can't stand the paperbacks. So I wanted to make sure if I was buying this that it would be a
paperback if you don't like paperback.
So I'm very specific about them being like this. So I learned this in my classes. When they don't lie flat like this, it's because it's called mouse trapping if it doesn't lay flat. And that means that the way that they've done the binding is cheaper than this way.
Oh, Miss Conrad degree over here flaunting her knowledge. I do agree that like a floppy paperback is key. If I'm gonna buy something in paperback, like it needs to be floppy because I don't like the cheap binding. You can tell it's cheap because it sucks.
Well, especially if you're gonna like annotate and things, like you need it to be floppy so you can do that with it.
Yes.
Especially with like how big they are too, like when they get bigger. I mean, even the same stream paperbacks are floppy too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, but Sarah did go ahead and Sarah, can you bring the new covers?
It's probably where she went.
Yeah.
Sarah's gone.
I'm betting you she's going to get the new covers so she can show off the floppiness.
You know, I wasn't. I was getting the Raven Boys so I could flop it.
Wow.
Yeah, that's
you know what? It feels like a personal attack.
that's not flop.
I will say I don't have the paperbacks of Raven Boys. I just don't like them being negatively talked about.
The first,
any context, I would never buy those. I have the hardcovers.
The first book in the series, like the color scheme, like that just looks like Catcher in the Rye to me.
It does.
Oh yeah, you're right. Oh, I actually won't be buying those. I'm just gonna continue on with the audiobooks because I read the first one and when Sarah told me that the last one isn't going to come out with the other cover, like there's just it's this or an ink mixed set, I was like, I guess I'll just stick with the audiobooks. Then I'll just keep a digital copy.
The only thing I'm going to say, Jade, is that you're going to have the same problem that you know the treadmill.
Are you really going to bring up the treadmill right now?
You're going to have that same problem with this book with ACOMAF. Just FYI, you know, you're going to be listening to avid sex scenes. So,
were you on a treadmill when something like that happened to you?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I didn't know it was a smut book because Madison freaking messed me up. Everyone was talking about Sorcery of Thorns. Everyone. Except for Madison, because Madison reads smut. So you should read this book and just like sent me a cover, like a picture of the cover. I was like, oh, fine, I'll read it because everyone's reading it and Madison told me to. And like today, I read things that Madison tells me. So I just brought it on audiobook really quick. I listened to the prologue in the store. I was like, oh yeah, this is cute. The prologue was too cute. Kids running through a maze. No, it was a lesson in thorns, and it's a BDSM smut romance where they all had sex in the forest, and there was and I listened to it on a treadmill in a public gym, and I tripped, and it was real bad. It was just a bad.
I can't believe you read that.
I think it's my favorite example of like getting names wrong. I mean, you got a court of thorns and roses, a sorcery of thorns, a lesson in thorns. Thorns are just everywhere.
I'm just reading the sorcery of thorns at that time too.
One of the comments says it'll help raise your heart rate.
It did.
It did.
I mean, that's one way to keep yourself motivated to keep running. I guess you want to keep listening.
I did not keep listening in the gym. I promptly left after falling off of the treadmill because I was like, oh my God.
That's not something you can easily recover from either.
I was like, huh, that's weird. And I was like, what is this scene? And then it like really started and I was like, oh, wow. Okay.
Oh my God. Someone goes, I listened to this without headphones while walking my dog the first time. I was just blaring this stuff for the world. Oh,
really amazing.
Jade, do you like the audiobook? Because I don't think I haven't even heard a snippet of it. Like,
yeah, I don't know what the narrator's like.
Yeah, I thought the audiobook was fine. I've listened to like better audiobooks, but I thought that this one did a pretty good job of like, I was able to, there's different levels of audiobook. For me, this was nice because I kind of was able to forget I was listening to an audiobook because there wasn't a lot of tone changes and voices and things like that. So it wasn't like theatrical. Instead, I was able to just kind of zoom into like the story and I was just hearing someone tell a story versus seeing a story. And that works for me in a lot of contexts. For sex scenes, that's probably ideal. So I've read worse books with sex scenes. Like, I think this is better if there's sex scenes involved because it's not so voicey. Like they're not going for it. They're just getting the information across. Yeah. It was fine.
Okay. So I want to quickly ask everyone who is currently watching this, because I know that this time around with the read along, we didn't really set out and tell you guys, you know, how to read it. And we didn't give like goals, like we didn't split it up. Would you guys prefer if it was like split up so you guys knew like how to read it and like when to read it? Because I never follow those when they're put out because I just read at my own pace. But is it helpful to kind of, I just don't, to have chapter split ups per week leading up to a live show?
Like more structured.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the word.
I prefer it. Some people like don't care and just do like whatever they want. But if that's like an option that you guys want to like keep pace, but keeping in mind that a lot, like we wouldn't be having discussions as we go, like the live show would still just be at the end of the month.
Yeah. I mean, are we getting any response? No. I don't think
but we can also post a poll on Twitter because that will probably like more people will see it.
Yeah, Twitter's. If you weren't aware, we have a Twitter for this, and it's where I update everything to go with this. It's just the easiest place to kind of let everyone know what's going on. Although I do know that not everyone does have a Twitter, so it does kind of become a bit 50.
I can put a poll on Instagram too.
Yes.
Everyone responding is saying they don't follow those, and they usually prefer to binge read.
That's what I do.
Yeah, I do too. So like.
Reading at my own pace.
If no one's gonna follow it, then why post it? We'll just
yeah, everyone is saying they like to read at their own pace.
I don't think anyone thinks that they want us to break up.
I don't think that book.
Someone goes, for ACOTAR, I literally can't put it down, so I wouldn't be able to resist reading more. True. Once I start ACOTAR, I'm not going to stop. So. I
mean, I read like the first 50 pages of this, and then I read the rest of it in 2 sittings. Like, it's just the easiest way to. Is that ACOTAR green? That doesn't like in my brain.
It's blue.
It's
no.
blue. Like,
oh God, I really don't like the pink one. That's
Like, the voices, they're awful. They don't.
These don't feel like a new, like if they were trying to go with like adult or new adult kind of looks, this is definitely more YA. Like the colors are just like
I feel like a child took a crayon out of the box and was like, yeah, let's make it this color. Like, they suck. They're a horrible redesign.
I was a graphic design major for 3 years before I changed my major, but when I look at something like this, I still want to rip it apart.
I have no design experience whatsoever, and I literally want to throw it in the trash.
Like whenever I see an ugly color cover or like anything, like the typography could be off, and I'm just like, I hate it. like I have thoughts.
It's so good. Why change perfection?
Money, Katie, money.
But like they could do some sort of like bomb ass, like the special editions for this book. Like the special edition of this book is beautiful. Like they could have just released a set in that type of special edition, and I would have spent all of my dollars.
Well, and now instead I'm banking on book boxes doing like book sleeve, like not book sleeves, dust jackets. Like I'm banking on, and I know that there are a couple out there that are doing their own sets, and I'm going to be buying those.
I don't really bother with replacing the book jackets, but I would for if there's a better one for A Court of Silver Flames, because like screw the new.
I was about to say I would get the physical set of books if I knew I could change the dust jackets to something like an indie designer or something like that.
I do like some of the comments. I probably wouldn't have picked this book series up if it looked like the new editions. I am a cover buyer. I don't like totally. I don't care.
I would be like,
if I saw this, I would say
sucks. Yeah.
Like I wouldn't give it like 2 seconds of thought besides that's ugly, and I would move on. Like
someone said Nessa should have been on the covers, should have been on the new covers, TBH. Yes. So Bloomsbury, if you're reading this, it's not too late. It's not too late. The book isn't out yet.
Can I have a job?
Yeah. If Maddie designed the cover, she could do better than whoever you had, because the new covers, I will say, Silver Flames, I'm not entirely opposed to it. It's the best of the new designs, but it's not great. It's not great.
Well, I think we're going to have to remember that
on it. So imagine it was like this style, kind of like with this type of type or whatever, but it, like the title's up here, and then you had like a face with the masquerade mask on it, and then with silver flames everywhere. I don't know, anything would have been better.
Katie,
I think that was going to be interesting.
Yes, I think
the paperback of it is going to be bright orange. The paperback is going to be bright orange.
God,
okay.
Right.
I don't mind the hardcovers. The paperbacks that are like attacking you. Also,
I don't like the hardcovers either, but yeah. I like the pin.
I left
a pre-order pin. It's not terrible.
Yeah, I left a link in the comments to do with A Touch of Magic Designs. They are an Etsy shop that I've been spending way too much money on recently, but they are doing dust jackets eventually for the series. They also have an Instagram where they released which cover they're doing. So
I love their prints. I've seen them.
I bought a lot of them.
Okay,
I'm gonna buy
one. I will probably. They have Strange Dreamer prints. Oh, okay. Wow, their Bryce print. I like it.
I've bought all their Bryce prints.
I'm not surprised by that statement.
I have problems with art prints. I think that's the one. It's the one thing that I buy a lot of without realizing it, and then I'm like, oops.
Someone said, I don't think it's a masquerading mask on Silver Flames. I think it's a stylized Illyrian helmet.
I was wondering what this is.
Because I was like, it's a masquerade mask. But we already did masquerade masks in A Court of Thorns and Roses. So, like, a helmet would make more sense. It's not going to make sense to you guys, but it makes sense to me.
Okay.
Like, why would we bring back the masquerade masks? Like, why use that again? That's why I was
okay.
like,
But until you mentioned the Illyrian helmet, I've been so confused as to why that was on there. I was like, this is something. I mean, doesn't it kind of remind you of Lucian?
that's what I was saying. Like, why are you going back to the masquerade masks? That has nothing to do with Nesta, and it's already been used. So why would it be used again in a different context? But helmet makes so much more sense. But the design is not clear enough for me to even know that, because it sucks.
Oh my god, this is too funny. I love how we went on to the covers because I think it makes so much sense. I also just realized that Bloomsbury is so big on it's on the front cover. Like, I've never seen a book that has it like on the front, like on the paperback, like the company, the publishing house.
Oh, it's on this one too.
Yeah.
It's on the new ones too. Right down.
They
You can't
said
really see it,
this is a
but
Bloomsbury book.
Bloomsbury is so interesting in what they do. Well, they're mainly known for Sarah J. Maas and then Bridget Cameron, so.
They're known for publishing Harry Potter as well in the UK.
Okay. I forget it. I never read that, so it doesn't make a difference to me.
That's a lot. That's the whole other thing.
I was like, we don't have time for that conversation.
No, we don't. But I'm just gonna say that's their big money maker in the UK. But in the US, it was Scholastic, so it's just how it works.
Does anyone have any last minute questions that they want to ask us? Because we've been here a while and I'm getting hungry.
Yeah, it's almost dinner time.
Yeah, no, you eat? We both eat dinner late. I normally dinner super late because of classes. But...
Well, I made a crock pot meal today, so I have to wait for it to cook.
Oh, that's fun.
Yes, I like the crock pot because you throw things in there and then you don't do anything for hours. My idea of cooking. Throw it in there. Okay, bye.
But Sarah and Jade, you guys would both continue. Even if we weren't doing a readathon, would you guys still continue with the series? Like, does it end off in a way that makes you intrigued? I know that Jade said you were thinking about right off picking it up, but what about you, Sarah? Intrigued?
Yeah, I liked the first book enough that I would definitely I would have bought book 2 regardless.
Yeah. Okay, we have questions now. Oh, sorry, Jade. I didn't mean.
Oh.
Yeah, I didn't say anything. I wasn't gonna.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm forcing you to read ACOMAF, so
I'm reading it. I'm in the
yeah, she said she wanted to read it. Okay. Someone goes, what did you think of the Starlight Pool? I liked it.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That goes into my comment of things that I think make sense, but I can't really talk about. So, okay. Then we have
I thought it was very pretty though. I liked the visual imagery of
the imagery. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So then we have certain chapters specifically. I guess maybe that means certain chapters that we like specifically. I mean, I'm very partial to the Under the Mountain chapters. I think that's the strongest.
My favorite chapter is actually the one where they he comes down and sits next to her and they chat while she's in the cell and he's just sitting outside and he's like, you know what? I'm just so sick of this. He's like, I've had it. And then they have a heart to heart at the very end. That's my favorite, I think, from the whole book. That and the Surreal. So.
Surreal is amazing. Okay, manga similar to the ACOTAR trilogy. I'm gonna let you guys take this because I've not read the manga.
When it comes to, I'm trying to think of fantasy romance manga that are like this because I read fantasy mangas and I read romance mangas, but fantasy romance intertwined can be very 50-50 to find, especially something that relates to this. But it's actually an idea, and I might actually, now that I have this question, who asked this question? G. I might make a video recommending manga off of book series from this.
I like that. I like that idea.
So
do it.
I will do that idea and work on it, and I will come up with a series to compare to this. So that is that. That is my answer.
Oh, I have a recommendation for not a manga, but a book that you can read. If you like fantasy romance, read From Blood and Ash by Jennifer L. Armentrout, because literally my favorite book of 2020. If you liked this book and you want more like a fantasy book that's very fantasy, but also very heavily focused on the romance, read From Blood and Ash. It's phenomenal. It's phenomenal. And there's also a lot of stabbing. So like, if you like the stabbing aspect of this book.
I do. I love when there's violence.
I like sword fights more than stabbing, but yeah.
I do have those too. They have those too. So like, I think you would
I
really
have
like
to my read, like to want to read list. I have it saved places.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then for the my brain just did my response go through? Yeah. For the live show date for next month, we have it tentative. I just need to double check with our other host to see if it works, but we are planning on November 28th or the 29th, that weekend, to give you guys some time. And also not to interfere with Thanksgiving here in the US because people celebrate that. Not that I care about it, but.
You don't like eat turkey or anything?
I hate you so much.
Oh my god!
I
literally thought you were making fun of the fact that
I thought you were kidding too. I was like, wait a second.
You're
vegan dinner. Like you can eat the cranberry sauce and like the stuffing, I guess. The potatoes.
Create an entire holiday surrounded by cranberry sauce.
I've never liked turkey. Turkey scare me as a creature. Turkeys are terrifying, and since they're so terrifying, I refuse to even eat them as a child anyway. So,
okay. So sorry about my ignorant question.
But you know what? Did a Saturday live show worked out? The only reason is just because, actually, I don't know if I'll have class on Fridays at that point anymore. The big reason why we can't do Friday nights is because I have class from 6 to 9 p.m. So they don't sell From Blood and Ash in Australia.
It's an indie publisher.
You know what? That actually makes sense because I was trying to buy it on Book Depository for a friend in Canada, and it was not available. So.
Yeah, but I think a bigger publisher might have picked it up. I like remember seeing something that it's gonna have like some sort of don't quote me on this because I just like don't really remember. But I think it might be becoming more available in the future because it's so popular. But as of right now, it's published by an indie, so it can be kind of hard to get. But yeah, but it's worth it. If you could just get it on Kindle, worth it.
Yeah, well, I mean, Elle Kennedy is an indie author, and she's just being picked up. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no, I mean like Book Depository in Canada. To Canada is annoying. The price was just a ridiculous amount, and I was like, I'm not buying that. So.
Yeah, it is on the pricier side too, like compared to other paperbacks on Amazon because of the indie publisher.
It's so big. Actually, I'm gonna get up and you guys are gonna see that I'm wearing a bodysuit, but not actually wearing the bodysuit correctly. I was wearing something before this and I could not be bothered taking everything off. So it's big.
Oh,
yes.
Wow.
It's big, but it reads
very fast. It was either.
When I read it on Kindle, and when I got my physical copy, I'm like, wait, like, was my Kindle book abridged or something like that? But it just reads really fast.
Oh wow! Look how the space from the top to there is actually weirdly big. That's such a strange margin.
Yeah, Rebecca said, I've seen so many people talk about it and I'm curious, I want to read it, but I think it has to be through Amazon or something now, I think. I think Amazon might be one of the only ways to buy it, actually, because of Amazon's actually good for, like, independent publishers because they might not be able to be sold in regular bookstores or anything like that. But again, like, with the popularity of the series, like, there could be, like, potential for it to be sold in other places in the future. But as for right now, literally Amazon, I think, is the only place that I've seen it.
Okay. Is there anything else? I mentioned Rhapsodic. Like I read that years ago. It's a much darker version of the ACOTAR series, like a lot darker. So I do want to mention that, but it is a fantasy romance. I only read the first one.
Yeah. But you said I don't want to read From Blood and Ash because it sounds similar to Yona of the Dawn. It is nothing like Yona of the Dawn. Like it goes in a completely different direction. I could see how you could think that, but it goes in a completely different and unexpected direction.
Yeah, that's actually interesting. I never actually heard of it sounding similar to that. That's interesting to think of.
Yeah.
The main love interest has this.
Oh, because Hawk and Hack. I guess. Could potentially see it.
Well, I read a book recently, and the love interest, his name was Maddox, but he went by Mads, and that really messed with me. I was not having it. Did I feel like if you guys anyway? I think that's it. I think we're gonna close off the live show. Actually, should we wait till it hits 2 hours exactly? Because like a minute.
Why not?
Sure.
I mean,
Just like wait for silence, or do we want to say goodbye?
No, we can say goodbye.
yeah.
20 seconds now.
We're just gonna leave.
Wait, FYI, the live show next month is going to be on Katie's channel. Just for everyone who's here.
It is. I just found that out now, but it will be on my channel.
I mean, we can always be on here, but I just figured it makes sense if we alternate.
No, it does make sense, so we can do it.
That's fine.
Oh, thank you, Jessica.
All right. Bye, guys.
All right, thank you guys.
Thank you so much for watching. Bye.
What are you doing?
Okay, where's the button?
You have to press the button.